Not only in your comments, but also in all the other comments that I read and hear, no distinction is made between the unions. And we've typically had two large and active unions. Could you tell me if they are different in their stances? And also comment on which measures or tenets of their beliefs are the most roadblock to reform?
Okay, so yes, I thank you for raising that. Let me give you that Colorado bill, for example, the teacher evaluation bill. The American Federation of Teachers supported it. The National Education Association opposed it. The president of the AFT, Randy Weingarten, has spoken in favor of using test scores to evaluate teachers under the right circumstances. Now, she wants to still be able to negotiate it so that it's done in a fair way. We generally are seeing the AFT, at least at the national level, much more willing to talk about a lot of the reforms that we're talking about here than the National Education Association. Some of that is because the NEA tends to represent a lot of suburban areas where the problem isn't just pounding them every day like it is in urban areas when it's staring at us in the face. I think the teacher evaluation issues are the biggest area where the unions create stumbling blocks, because it's for them it's everything. And and it's understandable. If you're a labor union, you want to represent due process rights for your members. You may say you like the idea of determining which teachers are better, but you're scared to death of what happens to the ones that aren't determined to be good teachers. And if they can't get the right processes in place to give them due process rights, they're never going to support it. So there's continues to be a lack of trust all over the country between labor and management, and as long as that's the case, it's going to be hard to get unions on board for some of this stuff. I think that just 30 seconds more on this, on the general concept, the approach that President Obama has taken on this was sort of that change is going to happen. The public wants change, and it's really going to be up to the union leaders to decide whether they want to be in on the discussions or read about them in the papers. And that's more and more leaders down the line are starting to take that approach, and it's really what's created the strange sort of tension and forcing some issues that needed to be forced.
Mr. Williams, where in your thinking or in your model does community partnering fit? Here in Cleveland, we've got a public schools CEO who's very committed to partnering with the community, and we've had some pretty good traction with a number of programs because there's so many people, including people in this room, who want to do something, not just talk about it and wring their hands, but rather get engaged, roll up their sleeves, and connect with the schools. And we've had some pretty good success along those lines, and it certainly relates to class size and student-teacher ratios in a lot of classrooms where inevitably you're not connecting with individual kids as well as you might. And so with some of these programs, we're able to get people like folks in this room who aren't professional teachers to actually walk into classrooms and connect with these kids. And it does have impact, and it can be very effective, even though we're not professional educators necessarily. Given all that huge reservoir of goodwill in most communities, and the desire to get in and help, and hopefully some receptive school boards and CEOs, do you see that as a significant piece of the puzzle potentially, or not, or where do you see that?
It can be. It can engage people in ways that they wouldn't have been before. It gets them to see how complicated this stuff can be. It's not as black and white as we sometimes make it appear when we're engaged in political debates. But it also has the potential to really drag things down. And this sort of gets at the sort of incremental change versus disruptive change to really change things, because it has the potential to bring in a lot of influential people and make them feel like we're getting close, even if we aren't, and that it makes it that much harder to do sort of radical stuff at the top. So, I mean, it's a complicated answer to this, but I think one of the things that we're seeing in a lot of charter schools around the country are people that tried to get involved and partner in meaningful ways and come to the conclusion that they were only going to bring the schools they were working in from here to maybe here. Whereas if they got involved and put their time, in some cases resources, into a new school that was started without the kind of bureaucratic restraints that we see in a lot of schools. You can take a school from here to here. My funders, this sort of gets highlighted a lot, are a lot of hedge fund investors in New York City. So they're all about leverage. They view everything in the world as leverage. When they're watching the Yankee game, they think what kind of leverage the relief pitcher is going to bring in. And all. So they look at this in terms of really bang for the buck. And for them, their involvement, the charter school route for them, after in some cases trying desperately to support public schools that they cared about, was a much easier way to serve more kids in a more effective manner.
Hey, Joe.
Hello.
Two questions. The first one is this. You said that there's about a 3-year, the best window of opportunity for education reform is about 3 years. That would coincide with the end of the Obama administration's either the first term or the full term if he doesn't get reelected. What do you think is the most important, longest lasting and significant federal public policy on education that should come out of the Obama administration? And the second question is, if you consider your track of making it more acceptable for Democrats to advocate on behalf of school choice and to criticize teacher unions as moving the party more to the right, I don't know if you accept that or not, but if that is moving the party to the right, what's the reciprocal impact, excuse me, on the other side of the aisle? Does that mean then that the Republican Party moves more left, or does what? Great question. On the first one, and I think, let me give you a political answer and a substance answer. On the political answer, in order for this to survive either a second Obama term or to the next president at that point, we're going to have success stories from all the stuff that we're doing right now. And I think, this is when I watch the race to the top and the winners on all this kind of stuff, I look at it from a messaging perspective. Like, I want states to win that are going to be able to give us stories that Oprah's going to want to talk about in a couple of years, because it's going to have to get to that level. On the substance, though, the most important thing I think we're seeing, and I mentioned it, the teacher evaluation pieces. If we can get more states to sort of blow up, it's been like 85, 90 years that this satisfactory versus unsatisfactory rating stuff has been in place. And that stuff, that's before teacher unions even existed. So I don't want to blame the teacher unions on that kind of stuff. Just sort of an outdated way. And I think back then it was created to sort of protect teachers when the principals were sort of assigned by the local political machines rather than being instructional leaders and all that kind of stuff. The question about moving the party to the right, I actually don't believe that it is. I've never understood how liberalism got to a point where it was arguing against giving poor children a chance to attend better schools. I never, I understood the free market arguments that people on the right made about things like school choice, but, and I don't actually agree with the free market stuff. I think I'm crazy on this kind of stuff. I don't think public school systems will improve because you give them choice. I think you give families choice because we're not giving them what they deserve for their kids. So I take a very lefty view on this kind of thing. Ironically, we've seen with issues like charter schools, as Democrats have stepped up their support in some places, Republicans are trying to figure out what's going on. They're not like into the issue as much as they used to be. It's not the fight that they thought it was, and it's a real problem. So this is where we do get pushback from people that say if it gets too sexy of an issue for Democrats, then we're going to lose the Republicans who helped get us here. And there's some yin-yang that needs to go on, and we're still at an early stages of seeing how it's all going to play out. Our goal is to make this a nonpartisan issue at some point, but we feel like we have to be partisan first to get there.